What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about Norway's $47 billion floating highway. Now, I don't exactly know what all of this means, even. I don't know if this highway is being built, if it is a plan for this amazing road, but it seems pretty incredible. And if it's $47 billion, is the highway floating up in outer space? Like, uh, all joking aside, Norway clearly is very progressive, and it has a fantastic way of implementing new technology, new structures and innovations very quickly into its society for the betterment of its people. So I think the construction of this amazing technological highway is probably a really great example of that. And I just wanted to learn more about this $47 billion highway and what makes it so expensive, right? This just sounds very interesting from a construction, from a technology standpoint, and totally a Norwegian thing to do. So, without further ado, let's take a look.
Norway is embarking on the largest roadway infrastructure plan in its history. In fact, it may be the largest road revamp in the entire world. With
Wow.
a budget of $47 billion, this new coastal highway is going to connect areas of Norway that used to take 21 hours to travel between.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Highway is going to connect
Look at this thing. I mean, I've seen some roads in Norway that zigzag up mountains. Some incredible road construction. Amazing. Beautiful. Built on the side of mountains. This is a whole other level of technology. This is going down and tunneling underwater. And it's massive. And it will allow people to travel places much faster. This is just incredible. If this is possible, I've never seen a tunnel like this go under the water like that. I don't know if this exists anywhere in the world. This is amazing. I can see why it's expensive, too.
areas of Norway that used to take 21 hours to travel between. It's going to bypass 7 different ferry crossings and cut travel time down by half. But how exactly is this possible?
Wait, this is going to go all down Norway's coast? Under and between all this land and water, so that people can travel down the western coast very quickly? And there's going to be boats going over it because it's underwater. This is amazing, man.
Different ferry crossings and cut travel time down by half. But how exactly is this possible? Well, by essentially creating the world's first ever floating highway. From state-of-the-art floating tunnels to how they're dealing with safety concerns. Here's a look inside Norway's ambitious new project.
So it's giant, massive tunnels that are floating under the water, not floating up. Not floating up in the sky, but floating under the water. Wow.
The almost 700-mile trip between the Norwegian cities of Kristiansand in the south and Trondheim in the north typically runs about 21 hours if you're traveling at an average of 30 miles an hour. That's over $200 in...
Wait a minute. So it takes 21 hours to get from the southern tip of Norway to the northern tip of Norway? I never knew that. That actually gives me a good idea of how big Norway is. It takes like a day to go from top to bottom. Interesting.
About 21 hours if you're traveling at an average of 30 miles an hour. That's over 200 US...
Actually, isn't there more? There's more to the north of that even. More land to the north. So this isn't even all of Norway in 21 hours.
It runs about 21 hours if you're traveling at an average of 30 miles an hour. That's
30 miles an hour? I'd be going faster than that.
it's over $200 in gas for a small car to travel just one way. Since 60% of Norway's exported goods are produced in the West Coast, where a third of Norway's population also lives, there's a lot of traveling between cities to keep the country running.
Yeah.
But with a new multi-billion-dollar road project, Norway hopes to cut travel times and the cost of gas to get there in half.
Wow, this is actually so smart for the economy, for trade, like trucks and trains and traveling and goods across the country. This is like great for importing and exporting goods, not just for travel for the people. It's good for everyone. This is just good. It's just good.
With 7 different ferry crossings along the way, getting around Norway is anything but a piece of cake, especially when you realize that each crossing can take about 45 minutes and cost about $16.
See, in America, I never even think about having to use a ferry to travel anywhere. But in Norway, there's places where you would have to get on a ferry to travel across the water to get to different places. I never even considered that. This would cut down on that as well. That is great.
Tourists may enjoy the scenic route, but those traveling for business or even medical purposes aren't big fans of taking the long way.
Right.
Fortunately, there will soon be a shortcut, thanks to the development of the new coastal highway Route E39. This $47 billion infrastructure project aims to replace the ferries with bridges and to create conventional tunnels, as well as what could be the world's first floating tunnel.
Man, I bet this is going to scare a lot of people at first. Because people won't know, like, they need to see it working for a while to trust it. At least that's how Americans are. Maybe Norwegians would be much more accepting of this. But it being underwater in a tunnel, Americans would be all freaked out. And it's funny because he's right. Tourists probably would want to take the boat, the ferry, the slow way to appreciate the beauty of Norway. But Norwegians, they just need to get place to place, and this is going to be so useful for them.
To form the highway, the submerged roadway is essentially a pair of concrete tubes submerged about 100 feet below the water's surface. This new and more predictable transport system will be of great benefit to Norway's national economy.
Wow.
It'll connect cities in ways they haven't been before and create new patterns of habitation for the people living there. These new roads will also shorten the path to reach hospitals, jobs, and schools.
I mean, this is just amazing. This would be such an undertaking to build. When was this video made? This was made in 2020, 2 years ago. Has construction on this started? Was this approved? Is this a thing in Norway? I'm gonna find out.
Creating a more stable and diverse economy and a lot of happy commuters. Norway also hopes that the new highway will increase their population. Some areas, like Tysons, a region of rural municipalities located on an archipelago off the coast, have lost over 50% of their population in the last century due to inaccessibility. The trend of population loss is continuing across Scandinavia. There are many benefits to restructuring the E39, but preliminary estimates show that the required investments and improvements will cost much more than the $47 billion highway budget.
Yeah, I mean, this thing is massive. Miles and miles of high-tech tunneling under the water, placing it there, building it, making sure it's safe. This is expensive.
They estimate it could even be as much as 340 billion Norwegian krona or 38 billion US dollars extra. So why exactly does Norway want to embark on this crazy floating tunnel strategy instead of just making more bridges?
Because it's cool. And it's very, it makes a lot of sense, honestly.
Norway has a few environmental issues with making roads. First, the harsh weather conditions can be unpredictable, with roads often closing and ferries having to cancel their departure last minute due to snow, heavy winds, or high waves. This leads to people driving for hours only to be turned away at crossings and forced to put their plans on hold.
This is so smart. This is another great reason. The floating road would be underwater, not affected by weather, by winter weather. This is so genius.
Norway is also home to many deep fjords, which makes things like bridges necessary. But they can have a huge impact on the environment and be unsafe in those harsh weather conditions. To decrease environmental impact and maintain Norway's natural beauty, the best and most efficient highway is the one that's almost completely hidden. With this in mind, the innovative new design Norway is going with is known as a Submerged Floating Tube Bridge, or SFTB. Ariana Minaretti, a chief engineer in the Norwegian Public Roads Administration, told CBC that some stretches they have studied will have average-sized tunnels of about 5 to 6 kilometers long, while others might be only 600 meters long.
Is Norway pioneering this? This seems like a technology that the rest of the world would want to take advantage of. Although it is perfectly suited to Norway's geography and unique situation with how it's a lot of islands and water and bridges and reducing the bridges. But This would be great in other parts of the world, I imagine.
Of about 5 to 6 kilometers long, while others might be only 600 meters long. She also explained that the submerged floating tube bridge was actually first conceptualized by naval architect Sir Edward Reed all the way back in 1886.
Really?
It was proposed again in Norway in 1923, but the technology still wasn't quite ready for such a big project.
Yeah.
Now, finally, the idea dating back more than a century is close to becoming realized.
Yeah.
With bridges that span long distances, you need arches and suspensions at certain points. But for a submerged floating tunnel, if you do it absolutely correct and balance the weight of the structure with the buoyancy of the structure, it can go on forever.
What? There's a lot of science and technology involved here, but it basically seems like these floating underwater roads are really advantageous in every way.
Said Niels Erik Anders Ronquist, a professor of structural engineering at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, who now works as a consultant on the new highway project. When a fjord is deeper than 100 meters or wider than 2 to 3 kilometers, the seabed is too deep for a traditional rock tunnel because it implies the use of a huge amount of land on the shores. Suspension bridges seem like an obvious second choice, but the harsh winds can endanger travelers and force the closure of these bridges. But with a floating tunnel, all of these issues can be avoided.
How long is it gonna take to build this? This sounds like a massive undertaking. I'm gonna see if this has begun construction. And isn't this gonna take years and years and years to implement? I mean, it's totally worth it. It totally should do it. But I'm looking forward to it existing.
Though the floating tunnel is buoyant, the tube itself isn't actually floating. The tubes are stabilized by cables tethered to the seabed, or by pontoons floating on the surface at roughly 800-foot intervals. The pontoon idea is likely the safest, because boats will be able to easily see the location of the tunnel. And with the actual tunnel far enough beneath the water's surface, ships, boats, and even submarines will be able to easily avoid collision.
That is so cool. How the boats are driving over these roads, these underwater roads. That's crazy.
The experts have decided that 20 to 50 meters, or between 60 to 150 feet below the surface, is sufficient depth to avoid collisions with water traffic while also avoiding a depth that could cause increased water pressure.
I mean, forget the ferry. People would want to just travel to Norway to experience this road, even if it's just a tunnel. The fact that it's an underwater tunnel for miles, people would want to just drive it and be like, yeah, I'm underwater right now. I'm in the future. This is amazing.
One of the proposed new tunnels is in Bonnefjorden, and it's called the Rogaland Fixed Link, or simply Rogfast. Construction has already started on the submerged tube bridge that'll be 390 meters deep and have a 27-kilometer-long tunnel.
Really?
Making it the deepest and longest undersea road tunnel in the entire world. A spur connection to the island.
Construction has already started 2 years ago. This was 2 years ago, so maybe it's somewhat done.
The municipality of Kvitsøy will be included in the design, creating a place where people can exit the E39 to enter a small village. Like conventional tunnels, the floating tunnel will also have escape routes that motorists could take to return to the surface in case of an emergency.
Right, this does remind me a bit of the Boring Company tunnels in Las Vegas in the United States that have Teslas driving through them. Tunnels that just go underground to connect important parts of cities. This is like that, but on a much, much bigger scale.
The Rogfast tunnel will have emergency exits every 250 meters, 820 feet, along with emergency lights and phones at various intervals.
That's going to make a lot of people feel much better about using it, knowing that there's all these escape routes and safety precautions. That's so important to putting the people at ease so that they want to use it. I'm sure they would actually use it no matter what because it's so useful.
The work on this particular tunnel started in 2018 and was expected to be completed in 2026 for a cost of $2 billion US.
Yeah, so the project of this tunnel was predicted to be like 8 years.
But with the project already overrunning cost estimates, it's now only expected to be completed by 2029. The government has proposed fundraising of an extra 1.3 billion Norwegian krone, or 145.5 million US dollars. And they plan to put a toll in place for 20 years after the tunnel's completion, with a fee of 150 krone per passage for light vehicles. That amounts to about 16 US dollars, which is about the same price it would take you to hitch a ride on one of those ferries.
Okay.
The design for these submerged tunnels is definitely innovative, but with innovation comes a lot of brand new problems. Fires and explosions are a major concern, as escaping an underwater tunnel isn't exactly the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, this is Americans think of this kind of stuff first. They think of, oh, what can go wrong? What's the danger? What's the problem with this? Whereas I immediately look at it and I'm like, this is just amazing. This is technology. This is great. Let's do it. But it's good that they're stopping and thinking about, hey, how do we make this safe? How do we make it practical?
Just imagine being stuck 150 feet underwater while disaster occurs. That possibility is enough to make even the most seasoned traveler anxious. Thankfully, Norway is already on the case to make sure their floating tunnels are as safe as possible. They have been testing small-scale fires and explosions in their tunnels to plan for cases where a truck is carrying dangerous goods or two large vehicles collide. They need to have a prepared and standardized exit strategy, as well as a response team that can quickly get down to the tunnels if anything goes wrong. Access for emergency services is absolutely crucial.
I mean, Norway is just on top of it.
However, the most challenging part of the design is getting to know the fjords and the best way to maneuver around or through them without causing any lasting environmental damage. Thankfully, the Norwegian Public Roads Administration has been studying Norway's natural landscape for years to best understand how automobiles and the environment can safely coexist. Even with their vast knowledge and research.
See, America doesn't, at least I never hear about our concerns for the environment and coexisting our buildings with the environment. But Norway, that's like a major concern, which is fantastic. Probably the reason it's so incredibly beautiful there still to this day. It's been so well thought about and maintained environmentally.
The most challenging fjord to get right is the Sonja Fjord. At 3.7 kilometers wide and 1.3 kilometers deep at its lowest point. Nicknamed the King of the Fjords, it's the largest and deepest fjord in Norway, as well as the hardest to build upon. Experts are still evaluating whether some fjords, like this one, are even suitable for a submerged floating tube bridge. While they may be in the process of creating these tunnels, research is nowhere near complete. The Coastal Highway Route Project is collaborating with 3 of the largest universities in the Nordic region.
Wait, is this a thing already? The Coastal Highway Route? Is this real or is this a mock-up? Is this a rendering of this route? Or does this really exist? This road that goes around over the ocean on top of the water? That's awesome. Huh. So this already kind of exists.
The Norwegian University of Science and Technology, the University of Stavanger, and Chalmers University of Technology. They have about 50 PhD candidates working on solving different engineering challenges related to the E39 project, including how to maintain the tunnels once they're constructed and make sure they never break. The group is also working on solving general roadway infrastructure issues in Norway, including the development of intelligent transport systems, using solar energy to create ice-free road surfaces in winter, and how to digitally operate and maintain their road structures.
That's so cool. A whole sector of technology in Norway just based around road and travel technology. That is amazing.
It's a lot of work, but figuring out all of these issues looks like it's going to be completely worth it for Norway. A continuous E39 highway that's accessible 24/7 despite harsh weather conditions will please inhabitants and tourists alike. As it is, Norway makes more than 50 billion krona, or 5.6 billion US dollars, in tourism each year. But a new and more efficient roadway is expected to improve that number.
Right. This may end up paying for itself over enough time. This is going to attract a lot more trade, a lot more tourism, and it's just awesome, by the way.
E39 will also create new links between islands and the mainland, encouraging more economic activity in areas that used to be a lot harder to visit. Norway hopes that their new floating highway will be accessible to traffic by 2050. It plans to be about
2050. Ah, man. All right, so there you go. I was wondering, we're still 30 years away. I'll have to check back on this video in 30 years and make an update. In 30 years, I'll make an update about, hey, the floating highway underwater in Norway is finally done. We can go drive that. Oh, man.
Their new floating highway will be accessible to traffic by 2050. It plans
Okay.
to be about 1,100 kilometers long by the end of construction, cutting back on all of the 7 ferry crossings, plus an additional cutback of 50 kilometers of roadway. While this ambitious project might be the first structure of its kind, it definitely won't be the last.
Right.
Engineers in Italy and China are already pursuing similar concepts.
Yeah. That makes sense. People in other parts of the world are looking at this, going, "Hey, this is a good idea. This is a worthwhile investment."
Now the only question is, who will finish first? Would you drive it?
Wow. So that was by The Richest. I liked that. I liked that a lot. That was really cool. Love seeing videos about technology I've never seen before, especially in Norway. It's awesome how it's always being thought about and innovated upon in Norway. Man, I was wondering how long this is going to take. It's going to take another 30 years, but that just shows you how forward-thinking Norway is as a country, though. They're like, hey, this project is going to help us with our trade, our economy. It's going to help our local population be able to visit the mainland easier and visit each other easier. It's going to help tourism, and it's going to help with safer driving and more practical driving, quicker. It just helps with so many things that Norway correctly is identifying this as a worthwhile project, a worthwhile investment in their country that is so smart. It is such a cool project that even though it's going to take 30 more years, they're like, hey, we have to start this. We have to get this ball rolling so that one day in the future, it's going to exist. And, 30 years where a lot of people who are working on it now are still going to be very much alive and able to enjoy it. And then Norway, for the rest of time, will have this incredible feat, this incredible road system that will help them for hundreds of years in the future. It's awesome. Everything about it is just like, so interesting and cool. I wish, America's doing some things like this, but it takes us a lot longer to focus and implement cool futuristic projects like this. So it's fun for me to look at them in Norway and be like, hey, that's awesome. I'm jealous. I want that. Super cool. So if you thought this video was cool, feel free to give it a like or leave a comment. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Norway, Norwegian culture, Norway, things in Norway I have never seen, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.